On this video, I've been trying to think about ways to talk through a manuscript that I was a part in. I had been given a manuscript to work out my own comments and so forth. And that's what I did years ago in the 70s. I don't know who the original author was. I give him or her credit for a number of the notes, and I'm just going to read it so it can go out there and be available for anyone that might want to work through it. I appreciated the notes, whoever the author was. It's very academically done. And I started out thinking, well, I'll do Hebrew, but it's going to be too long to try to read and do Hebrew grammar and at the same time uh, follow through on a lot of the notes. So I thought I would just read the chapter and read the notes that I found very, very helpful as a secondary author of a text that was given to me back in the 70s to work on. So again, I give credit to whoever it was. I didn't know the name of the person that, first of all, produced a lot of the notes, and then I reworked in my own Hebrew study what he had done. So I want to give fair credit there. But I just want to read it, uh, and whoever it was, I want to thank him. Uh, Again, I have no idea who it was. So I'm going to read the notes that I had worked through, and I thought it'd be best to do a chapter summary and try to work through uh, the verses in sort of a summary way, uh, rather than trying to do my usual analytical Hebrew grammar. So let me just read the text and translating it from the Hebrew. Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the land of from the river unto the land of the Philistines, unto the border of Egypt. They brought presents and served Solomon all his days. Basically, it looks like to me, in the note that I have, Solomon ruled over the kingdoms from the river, which would refer to probably the Euphrates River, from the river, the land of the Philistines, and into the border of Egypt. While no preposition such as unto appears between the words river and the land, the word land in the context indicates the idea of motion towards it, and may therefore be rendered from the river, meaning the Euphrates, unto the land, that is, all the petty kingdoms between the Euphrates and the southeast corner of the Mediterranean Sea were tributary to Solomon. Similar is the statement in verse 24, where in verse 24, this, of course, Solomon's inheritance came from David at first. The portion occupied by Israelites was about 150 miles long and 75 miles wide. The vassal territories to the north extended the length to about 400 miles. All the kingdoms in this territory brought tribute, minha, to him, that is, to Solomon. And then, as we continued, Solomon's provision for one day was 30 measures of fine flour, 60 measures of meal, 10 fat oxen, 20 oxen out of the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides harts and gazelles and roebucks and fatted fowl. For he had dominion over all the region on this side of the river, from Tipsah even unto Gaza, over all the kings on this side of the river, and he had peace on all sides. And so it looks like, as we're looking at this, the Gaza was the Philistine city at the start of the desert road to Egypt, located in the southwest corner of the empire. It was previously one of the famous 5 cities of the Philistines. And so Solomon had access, it looks like, to all of this area. And as we continue, we learn of the splendor of Solomon and the vast wisdom of Solomon. Let me just think through as I'm reading these notes and talking through all of this. Notice how big his table was. I can't imagine feeding that many. And he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite and Haman and so forth, and his fame was in all the nations round about. Verse 11. And he spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 3,005. And he spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon unto the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke also of beasts, of fowl, of creeping things, and of fishes. And there came of all peoples to hear the wisdom of Solomon from the kings of the earth, who had heard of his wisdom. So what we're told here is that Solomon had a lot of wisdom, and from all over, people were coming and were recognizing his great wisdom and what he could offer. And when it came to pass, when Hiram heard the words of Solomon, he greatly rejoiced and said, verse 21, Blessed be the Lord this day, who has given unto David a wise son over the great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have heard that which you have sent unto me. I will do all my desire concerning timber of cedar and concerning timber of cypress. So Solomon now is going to be involved in building the temple. And we're hearing of his friendship with Hiram and his proposal, Hiram's proposal, to supply the timber for the building. So he says, My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will make them into rafts to go by sea into the place that you shall appoint me. So Hiram gave, verse 24, Solomon timber of cedar and timber of cypress. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, 20 measures of beaten oil. Thus Solomon gave to Hiram year by year as a result of that. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom, as he promised, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they made a league together. King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon, 2 months at home, and Adoniram was over the levy. And Solomon had 70,000 that bore burdens, and fourscore thousand that were hewers of the mountains. And besides Solomon's chief officers that were over the work, 3,300 who bore rule over the people that did the work. And the king commanded, and they quarried great stones, costly stones, to lay the foundation of the house with hewn stone. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders and the Gabalites did fashion them and prepared the timber and the stones to build the house. So, as we think about this particular chapter, we're told that Solomon's wisdom, let me just think about what I'm trying to read here. Some of these notes are disjointed. I think what I'm going to do is we're looking at the vast splendor of Solomon's kingdom and wisdom, and I think I'm going to try to organize these notes a little bit better. I wanted to use them because I had had them, but had never really used them. I want to say Solomon, we do see, was a great naturalist. The historian tells us in everything within nature, from the highest plant, the cedar, to the lowest, the hyssop. The hyssop is not the smallest plant in the world, but suitable as a symbol in contrast to the lordly cedar of Lebanon. These are contrasted to show the range of Solomon's knowledge and composition. He spoke not only of plant life, but of animals, birds, and reptiles. Many of the proverbs of the Bible illustrate this kind of wisdom. And so we're told that kings came and others to see of Solomon and his great wisdom. And so, as we continue in this chapter, chapter 5, there is a well-organized account of the building of the temple. And Hiram sent messengers. It seems today that many agree that Hiram is the one who supplied the materials and masons for David's palace, 2 Samuel 5:11. At this time, Tyre was the leader of the Phoenician commercial empire, comprised of related city-states, and it had established colonies as far as Tarshish in Spain. Tyre's mainland possessions lay west of the tribe of Asher. The city was built on a rocky island, nearly 1/2 mile offshore, in two harbors. The southerly one protected by breakwater 820 yards long, built by Hiram. Safe anchorage was thus always available to his merchant fleet, and Tyre was in fact the only good harbor along the east shore of the Mediterranean. The friendly relations which Hiram had cultivated with David are here also in this chapter seen renewed with his son and successor by a message to Solomon. Interesting in this note, the previous alliance between the two nations had been mutually beneficial. Israel, being basically an agricultural country, furnished wheat and oil for Tyre to consume or distribute to its Mediterranean customers, while Phoenicians were a commercial people, delivered in exchange their manufactured dyestuffs, lumber, cedar, and skilled labor. So a new treaty was now entered into in furtherance of the building of the temple, the great work of Solomon. Uh, and so we're told, let me just get my thoughts here a bit, um, that I'm reading again these old notes and trying to put them together. They're random notes, and it's hard to get a perfect flow of thought, but they're random notes about the background of what is going on. Um, so let me just say David had not been able to build the temple. So Solomon answered Hiram's greetings with a letter requesting his help for further to help with the project in building the temple. And Solomon begins by stating the reason why his father could not build the temple. Let me just go back a minute on that. This is still in chapter 5, verse 17. And he could not do so because of the wars which surrounded him on every side, that is, David, keeping him occupied so he could not build the temple. In 1 Chronicles 22:8, however, there's another reason which the Lord had given to David. Because he had shed much blood in warfare, he was not permitted to build the sacred temple. Both are true. God had spoken the message in 1 Chronicles 22:8 to David, and David's wars did keep him occupied throughout his reign. Solomon, perhaps out of filial respect, omits the reasons cited in Chronicles. So then as we think about 5, I'm trying to follow some of these notes. Nowhere else could Solomon have procured materials for the woodwork of his contemplated building program, for Palestine and Egypt were deficient in hardwood trees. The Egyptians had used cedars of Lebanon in their palaces, and its resistance to insects must have been well known in other lands. The grain is attractive, cedar carves well, and the fragrance most pleasant. The forests of Lebanon, which came down close to the Mediterranean in Solomon's time, extended to the top of the Lebanon mountains. The strip of land, more or less paralleling the coastline, was the inland territory of the Phoenician cities on the coast, Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos. Timber was a lucrative part of Tyre's exports. Hiram undertook to furnish Solomon with as much cedar and cypress wood as he needed, and further, to deliver it wherever. The logs would be tied together in rafts for the trip south. And also, he talks about sending men as well. Again, I'm just trying to read these old notes. The lumbering operations were to be on so large a scale that the Tyrians alone could not have enough labor to do it quickly. Solomon agrees to supply the unskilled workers from forced labor camps and to pay for the skilled Phoenician lumberjacks. At this point in the text, many problems are raised by commentators in an effort to reconcile different passages. And some critics say that editors of Kings and later author of Chronicles couldn't accept that Solomon could do such a thing, or that the temple could have been built with such force Israelite help. As a result, some suggest that these editors sought to cover this up by stating that Solomon really only used non-Israelites for this work. This conclusion, however, leads to a stark contradiction in the biblical record and does not therefore solve the problem. In contrast to this view, by seeing two classes of forced workers, the scriptural texts are best explained. Solomon hired 30,000 men from all Israel, 1 Kings 5:27, as well as 150,000 strangers or Canaanite people who were left in the land, 1 Kings 5:29. The 30,000 men from Israel worked in monthly shifts and only worked 4 months out of the year in Lebanon with the Phoenician craftsmen and were at home the rest of the year. This again is in 1 Kings 5. Whereas of the 150,000 non-Israelitish foreigners, 80,000 were used in the mountains splitting stones, while 70,000 were acting as porters or carriers of the stone. Again, 1 Kings 5:29 in the note. Unlike the Israelites, there is no mention of any relief for them. Furthermore, they evidently became servants for life, hence permanent servants through Solomon's levy. This is borne out by the receiving phrase unto this day, later on in 1 Kings 9:21. Thus, while the 30,000 Israelites served Solomon temporarily while building the temple, they were probably retired from this levy after its completion, while the foreigners became servants for life. The best explanation of all the passages involved seems to be the thought here. Sonsino commentary and Dalit suggests this. No man in Israel knows how to cut timber as the Sidonians. The Sidonians were the Phoenicians named after their principal city, Yadon. The Sidonians were skilled craftsmen well known for their ability at this time. And in verse 7, basically, I am going to stop here. I'm trying to organize these notes, and I apologize for what I'm struggling with. They're sort of disorganized, and I'm trying to organize them because I want to put out what was given to me years ago. And whatever this unknown author or the notes that he gave me and some of the background that he put in seems to be very good to me in terms of his research. So I'm just going to put it out. It's very choppy what I'm doing, but I don't know whether it's a help to anybody or not, but I'm trying to revive these notes and try to keep them. Most of what I do is grammar study, and so I just picked this up and decided I would just put it out there. If anyone would have an interest in it, that would be great.